Hello everybody, it's Julia here from the Highly Sensitive Tarot, and I'm back today with another VR. This one was inspired because over the weekend I was watching some old tarot videos and I came across my favourite guidebooks, which is a VR I think initially started by Lisa Pepez, probably about 10 months ago now I think. But I originally saw the video on Katie Flower's channel, who I know she's not recording tarot videos anymore, but I do watch a few of her old videos now and again. I've also seen a similar video to this on Lady Knight of Avalon on Maria's channel, where she did her top favourite guidebooks, but I don't think she put it as a VR as such. But I will link and put all of these people in the description box anyway. I'm going to put one timestamp in this video. I've got 3 oracle decks and 7 tarot decks. So I'm just going to split that really. I'll put one timestamp in. I've kind of got 11 decks really, because I just want to give a sort of honorary mention that even though there's not actually a guidebook, an actual physical book that you can touch for this deck, for the lovely Pensive Path Tarot. Sorry, I've got my camera in a different position than I would normally, and I'm finding myself looking in all the wrong places and holding things up in all the wrong places, and hopefully I'll get used to it. It's not nice when people aren't looking at you in the videos, when they're looking off in a different direction, so I will endeavour to look at you. But anyway, this is the Pensive Path Tarot, this lovely deck which I have shown you in several different videos now. I love this deck, and it's an indie deck by Reese Marin at the Curated Card, I believe. And she didn't do like a paper guidebook for this, although she did do a few cards with sort of little keywords for some of these cards on. But she started a few months ago doing an online video guidebook. So I have watched those and I have been enjoying that, because it's really quite nice to hear why a creator would choose certain pieces of art to go with certain tarot cards. So I will link Reese's videos in the description box as well. But anyway, with the actual books that I've got hard copies of, real copies of the books, I'm going to start with the oracle cards. And I say oracle cards, but this is kind of a deck of its own. It's called the Wisdom Well. You're getting a glare from the sun. There's actually some lovely sunshine today. So yeah, this is the Wisdom Well. You may have seen this on my channel before. This is a very bizarre little box with a book in it and a deck of cards in it. And the book, I sometimes just read. You've probably heard me say many times that I love the work of Carl Jung. And this is all about Carl Jung's archetypes. These don't necessarily relate to the archetypes of the tarot specifically. But I just love them. I just absolutely love this book. Some of the archetypes are the same. Like we've got the Hermit here, and I'm just going to read you some bits from the Hermit, because I think that's what I'll do with most of the decks here, is that I'll just read you a little bit from one of the pages of each, just so that you get a flavour for it. I think this Wisdom Well, I don't think it's in current print anymore. I seem to remember I did buy this new many years ago. I may well have had this deck for 20 years now. Let's have a look at the copyright. So this is 2003. So yeah, I could well have bought this when it came out new. I don't think that it is in print anymore, unfortunately, but I have seen second-hand copies of this on eBay and various places, and I think if you like Carl Jung and you like archetypes, this is definitely a deck worth sort of searching out. So if we were going to look at the Hermit, the keywords that we've got here are, and by the way, sorry, this is by Ivana Kalinkova, this deck, Ivana Kalinkova. So the keywords here are introspection, secrets, reserve, withdrawal, isolation, putting up barriers and walls, autism, which is interesting, isn't it? Considering I have autism, I'm also a Virgo. I resonate very strongly with the Hermit energy, so I find that quite interesting that that's actually even mentioned in this book, really. Introvert, feeling like a stranger in one's own land, the lone sailor, self-containment and solitude. So it says this card refers to the parts of the self that are introverted or secret, and to the things that you internalize. At the beginning of its development, the psyche is open to the world. When it encounters an obstacle that it cannot overcome, it turns inward, falls silent, and becomes an unexpressed part of the character. Fantasy or regression are attempts by the psyche to turn outward again. The closure of character is acceptance of the introverted state, which is interesting. The Hermit card can mean advice to keep the question being asked private. To draw this card is a bad omen when asking about fame or publicity. It reflects situations, people and doors that are closed to you. This card may suggest internal experiences, the inner world, self-knowledge, hidden knowledge and research. The Hermit card can also signify becoming withdrawn or isolated in a particular situation, as well as solitude and loneliness. The card always indicates a lonely position. With this card, no one is on your side, but you have to fight the battle of life anyway. And although that sounds terribly dramatic and sad, you know, those kind of energies have resonated with me throughout my life. I think it's when you have autism and you're very introverted, it's quite difficult to feel any real strong connection with anybody really at all, because you can end up feeling so different. I'm not explaining that very well, but that's not what I'm here to do anyway, to talk about myself. So yeah, that's just a little flavour of this book. On the card it says, I am an enigma, closed and protected. When my spirit meets the sun, I shine out warmly without giving up my depths. So I like that. So there is loads of that kind of wisdom in this deck and in this guidebook here. It is one of my absolute favourite possessions, and it's something that I go to quite a lot to look at. So that's deck number 1. So deck number 2 with the guidebook is this one, is the Wild Unknown Archetypes, and this is Kim Krantz. And to be honest, without this guidebook I would not stand a hope in hell of reading these oracle cards, these archetype cards. A few of them you can get a good idea of by looking at the images, but sorry, they're all turned around. I am so careless with my decks, it's terrible. But some of them you just, well, you could sit and study these images, and you could get little messages from them. You know, your intuition can flash and spark, and you can get little insights and ideas. But to be honest, the guidebook is so fantastic. So I've just opened it at a random page here, and what you get is you get a lovely picture, and you get a lot of written information. So I've just opened it randomly to the mountain, and you get a lot of writing in the middle, plus you get all these other little sort of bits and pieces around the edge of the main bit of writing that are always very interesting, like contemplate Joseph Campbell's suggestion that you are the central mountain, and the central mountain is everywhere. When light, we've got grounded in the eternal, steadfast uplifting. When dark, ominous, daunting, isolating and frigid. And to go deeper, you can look at Mary Oliver's The Poet Dreams of the Mountain. So as you can see, there's a really good description of what the mountain, the archetype of the mountain might mean. Plus you get suggestions to look at books, artwork, sometimes pieces of music, poetry. This one also suggests research mountains. Find one that strikes you and stare at it for a while. Where is it? The pilgrim may be awakening in you, and the summit calls. So there's just so much information really with this guidebook, and if you really are into studying things in depth, there's lots and lots of things here. It gives you lots and lots of suggestions of other places to look for information about that archetype. So I really do like that deck. It's not one that I've particularly used in readings in my videos, just because I have used it a few times actually, but just because I would have to pick up the guidebook to, you know, do my best with it. And I think when you're doing a reading for somebody else, often it doesn't feel right to pick up a guidebook and look at the guidebook. It feels that ought to be information that comes from you and the dialogue that you're having with that other person. I think that's just my sense of pride over the reading of the cards. But when I'm reading for myself, I ponder and I spend a long time looking and thinking about things, and I quite often look at the guidebooks for certain decks, not all of my decks, but for certain decks. So the third oracle that I've got is this one, and this is the Soul Oracle cards by Sonia Croquette, and they're actually really quite dull, boring little cards to look at. Sorry, I am being rubbish at this today. It's just because I'm using a different way to record. So it's thrown me a bit. So, you know, reach for the stars. And we've got a dove here, or a bird of some kind with a man hanging on to it. That, you know, there's not a great deal on these cards, and at first sight you might think, well, you know, hey, there's a lot better oracle cards around. But what really won this deck over for me is the little guidebook that comes with it. This is a Hay House deck. I've had it a long time. You can see it's quite well thumbed. This was 2006, and I may well have bought this all that time ago. I may well have bought it in 2006. But so I've got on the top here, we've got Face Your Shadow. So I shall just open the book to that page. It's card 48, and I'll read you a bit of it. So, Face your shadow. In what area of your life are you being so fixed that you refuse to budge? Well, lots of places in my case. Causing extreme stress for those around you as they compensate for your negativity. Oh dear. Where have you become so absorbed with your own needs that you're insensitive to those of others? What aspect of your life is leaving you feeling harsh, angry, or secretive? Where have you been so consumed by your own priorities that you feel enraged when other people don't readily share them? The darkness descending upon you is the reflection of your own shadow, or those aspects of your nature that are wounded and fragmented. So your soul's purpose right now is to recognize your shadow and take responsibility for the pain and misery that is inflicting upon you and others. Your higher self is present to keep you from denying your shadow and to help you confront it head on. Whether it's showing itself in selfishness, jealousy, aggression, abuse, insensitivity, or manipulation, your shadow can actively wreak havoc on your life. Accept your shadow compassionately as your repressed inner child and recognize your need for healing. Stop hiding from or justifying your self-centered behaviors. Forgive yourself for acting out on your fears instead of the wisdom of your higher self. And keep your shadow from swallowing your life further. It's time to shed light on the darkness. So, did you see immediately that I started to read this? I started to take ownership of the words and reflect upon them within myself. And I've noticed with this little guidebook that every card and every message within this little guidebook has some significance for me and some meaning for me, and it's a fantastic little guidebook actually, just for like when you're feeling down or fed up or sad or just generally anxious and you don't know why, you know, like when you have that sort of churning sort of feeling in your stomach and you just don't really understand what it's all about. I think this deck and this little guidebook is brilliant for helping you to actually work out and clarify what's actually really wrong. And it's not one of those real sort of love and light type decks that is just almost toxic lightness, that it's a deck and a guidebook full of light and shadow, and it's not afraid to give you a kick up the bum when you need it either, which I do fully appreciate. So there we go. That's the Oracle decks, and I'll be back in a mo with the tarot decks. Okay, so the first tarot deck that I've got, or the first guidebook with a tarot deck I've got here, is the Dark Wood Tarot. And where are the cards for this one? Where are they? Where have they gone? Here they are. I've got a lot of decks and things here. So these are beautiful cards. I do hope you can see them. The sun is coming in through the window. These are really, really nice cards, but for me, they're not easy to read intuitively, I guess. It's the journey of the witch here through the forest. And as you can see, there's not a huge amount going on in these cards. If you couldn't read tarot, you know, using Rider-Waite-Smith type using the Rider-Waite-Smith system, if you couldn't already read tarot and you didn't have some basic knowledge of tarot, I think you would really struggle with this deck. And you know, when I bought the deck, I nearly gave up on it, to be honest, quite quickly, until I started to look at the book. And This book by Sasha Graham is just fab. It you get a lovely picture of the card, and you get a really nice explanation of what's actually going on in that card. So I've just opened the book here to Temperance, and it says Temperance is the archetype of complexity, which is interesting. And it says transcend duality to embrace entirety. So the Shadow Witch leaves death behind while understanding all her lessons. She moves out to a great plain and walks towards an endless horizon for what feels like hours. Actually, I'm not going to read the description of her. But it says once the lesson of death is understood, accepted and ingested, the spirit can engage temperance. You are now able to combine the oppositional ideas of life and death in a new form. A new path appears, options become available. The centre and focal point of temperance is the liquid that she fuses. It is the card of balance and complexity, but also the magic we make when we focus on what's in front of us. We stand inside shifting polarities. Temperance is how we greet the changing dichotomy of life. Isn't that nice? That's a really nice way to explain temperance, and it's explaining temperance also as card number 14, following card number 13 of the death card. I like that each of the cards in the guidebook flow into the next, so it shows you the progression and the journey through the major arcana. I really do like that. So yeah, the Darkwood Tarot. If it didn't have such a good guidebook, I probably wouldn't still have this deck in my possession, I think is likely. So there we go. So the next one, this is one you will have seen on my channel a fair bit recently, because it's one that I've just finished a deck study with just recently, and it's not the Bosch Tarot, which I am coming to the end of, but I couldn't include the Bosch Tarot in this video because it has, as much as it's made me laugh, it's made me frown, and I have really struggled with the Bosch Tarot, so I'm not including that in here, even though it does have a pretty good guidebook actually. I've had a gutful of the Bosch Tarot recently. So this is the Tarot of the Abyss, this beautiful deck here, which I really was not sure whether I would like when I first got it, when I first bought it, but I totally fell in love with it. It's a really, really emotional deck. It's beautiful. I love that there's 2 3 of Swords and 2 10 of Swords in this deck. There's just so much to like about it. And the guidebook, even though it's just one of these little chunky guidebooks by US Game System, this is by Anna Terrain, I think that's how you pronounce her name. It's got so much fantastic information in it. So I've just opened this. I was going to open it randomly, but I won't. Let's have a card. So the Tower card here, which we can see there's a sort of house built into a tree, which is looking very precarious anyway, but then there's a man hanging off the house and off the branch. It looks like somebody may have already fallen. So let's have a look at that card in this book, the Tower. Where are we? Card number 16. So the storm rages on, the thunder and lightning tearing through the night, destroying everything in its path without mercy. The idyllic treehouse, once poised tall, is now torn and rent. Constructed on the hopes of childhood dreams, the treehouse now lies shattered, clinging to life as the man dangles dangerously from its foundations. One person has already fallen. With no more strength left, she's let go, surrendering to the abyss. I think sometimes that's what we all need to do, isn't it? If the houses were built on sturdier ground, could it have been prevented? It's not likely. The storm was bound to arrive sooner or later. And isn't that the truth of life? You know, the storm is always going to come. It's how we deal with the storm that I think matters. So the Tower card is not a card we love to see in readings. It's unsettling, to say the least. When it reveals itself, we cringe at its potential ramifications. There's no sugarcoating it. It's a card that augurs a time for drastic transformations that will force you to move out of your comfort zone. If you're a person who doesn't enjoy change, this card can signal a potentially challenging time. The Tower doesn't bring small changes, it produces major shifts. Things that appeared stable and constant are now uprooted and abrupt. You may have to sell your home, relocate, or seek new employment. As stressful as this period can be, remember that you are not your job or your house. You do not identify with those things or the place where you reside. These are the supporting elements in your life that bring stability and comfort. However, they are not always fixed and static, and it may be necessary to relinquish them to open up to new possibilities. So the one who stays constant in the sea of change is your true nature. See that you nourish, safeguard, and keep it well. And I think that advice really is something that is really important for all of us to think about, isn't it? Is that, you know, the storm is always going to come. It's how we actually deal with the storm, our true nature, to see that we nourish and safeguard ourselves, and to realise that our job, our home, our relationships, all of those things, they're not really us, are they? They are just the supportive elements of our life, and that life changes. Life always changes. So yeah, this book feels really emotional to me. It feels like sometimes that it even sort of tells the story of my life, I guess, really. Things that have happened to me, things that are important to me, the ways that I've grown and learned about myself. I just love it. It's a brilliant deck and a brilliant book. So the next guidebook is from the Book of Shadows Tarot, and you may have seen me use only one of these decks, because this was a box set of decks, and deck one is this one. So I think we have the as above and so below decks here, deck one and deck two, and I think this is the as above deck, this one with the blue around it, and this is very pagan. You can't see, can you, because of the sun? Can you see now? This is very pagan orientated, and if I'm honest, I have not really done this deck justice, particularly just because I suppose I'm still learning about some of these things here. So these are, you know, we've got in bulk there, we've got Samhain, Letha, initiation, the world. The elements are just water, fire, earth and air. But they're really, really nice cards. I just haven't really, I suppose out of the two decks that came in this box set, I gravitated more towards the So Below just because they are more readily understandable, you know, based on my knowledge of tarot already without even having to read the book. This volume 2 is quite accessible for most of us. It's a really nice deck. I use it quite a lot actually for myself and to read for other people because, well, it just resonates. So the book, this is the guidebook, and it goes through volume 1 and volume 2, and it's a good job it does for volume 1 really, because otherwise I wouldn't have a hope in hell of understanding it. Like the Fool in this card is called the Summerlands, and that's about reincarnation. We've got the Wheel of the Year for the Wheel. For the Moon we've got Samhain. For Death we've got Yule. For the Star we've got Imbolc. For Temperance we've got Ostara. For the Lovers we've got Beltane. For the Devil, Lammas. I think that's how you pronounce it. So yeah, extremely pagan orientated and really nice. And then if we get into the So Below, the volume 2, let's just read one from here. So this is the Chariot, as we're in the year of the Chariot. The Chariot either has a lot going on or is focused on one large task. The only way she will succeed is to focus, focus, focus. There is no room for distractions or daydreams. Single-minded determination is key. So the triumph of will in difficult circumstances, the ability to do what needs to be done, and reversed is losing control or a situation that gets out of hand and chaos. But I just really, really like this little book. It doesn't have a great deal of information on the So Below because they are much more intuitive. The images that you'll see in the cards are everyday scenes of our lives really, whereas in volume 1, the As Above, they are very pagan and they are much more focused on spirit, I guess. So I was just flicking through, and the 7 of Air, which is the 7 of Swords, we've got the I Ching here, which is strange, isn't it? You can see that. It says the 7, I mean, there's a lot written here about it, but it says the 7 of Air reminds us that just as yin exists within yang, and yang within yin, so your answer lies within your question. Examine what you are asking and find the wisdom and guidance that dwells there. Which is interesting, isn't it? The 7 of Swords is often a sort of defensive sort of energy, isn't it? Yeah, interesting. See what they put for that there. Sorry, I was getting carried away looking at that. So yeah, that's the Book of Shadows Tarot. The next little book I've got here is from my Anna Kay deck, and it comes with this lovely chunky little guidebook, which doesn't have a great deal written in it. This is the Anna Kay, which I'm sure that you are all aware of, you're all familiar with. This beautiful deck. I know some people struggle with this deck. They don't, I've heard people say they don't like the faces on the people in these cards, and I can see why, but if ever I'm asking questions actually about people or relationships or families, things like that, I'll often go to the Anarchy because I think it's just very friendly towards those kind of subjects. So let's pick a card. So I've just picked the Moon. So let's have a look at the Moon in here. Flick, flick, flick. Where are we? The Moon. There we go. So the Moon represents the unconscious, dark and shadow side of life. It symbolises the journey to the deepest abyss of the soul, the irrational source of life. The Moon represents times in which you meet your primal fears, times of mourning and sadness. It represents everything that is hidden, dark and inaccessible without reason, which cannot be described with words. In many ways, the Moon is beautiful and also a positive card because it says that only the acceptance of the dark sides of life can give depth to the experience of the light sides of life. Still, having a strong connection with the dark sides of life can also be dangerous because those who look at the Moon only and not the Sun also will soon become caught in depression or even psychosis. Wow. So I think that, it doesn't say a great deal, but what it does say, I think, is extremely relevant, and it resonates quite strongly. I can feel it, kind of thing. And I think with all of these guidebooks, actually, I've been reading cards for 30 odd years on and off throughout my life. I know the basic meanings of tarot cards. So if I'm going to be looking at a guidebook, it's got to be something that really does sort of strike me in some way, something that emotionally impacts upon me or gives me another layer of some kind to the deck. So the next deck that I've got here, deck number 8, so we're nearly there, there's 10 decks. So deck number 8 is the lovely Mystical Cats Tarot, which is a deck that I could read so easily. It's beautiful. This deck doesn't really need a guidebook. It's really easy to see what's going on in these cards. I love them. These are very emotional cards for me. But I just found with the guidebook that went with this that it does open up another layer. Let's have a look at the Sea Queen. So this is the Queen of Cups. She was on the top there. Let's have a look at what it says about her. Sea Kitten, Sea Tom, Sea Queen. So, tranquil and blissful, the Sea Queen gazes upon her world with sweet love. She is intuitive and sensitive to the moods of her family and clanmates. A gentle mother to her kittens, she is tenderly devoted to them long after they reach maturity. Her dreamy nature and gentle kindness draw cats to her for friendship as well as romance. The Queen's love pours forth as freely as the fountains that adorn her realm. So the cat's advice is, you will find your greatest joy by keeping an open heart and listening to your dreams. Honour your intuition's guidance and your own sensitive nature. Trust that the open affection you freely bestow on your loved ones is much appreciated. If this card doesn't represent a person, it can indicate a time of psychic awareness and attunement to subtle nuances in other people. And I really like this because this is such a positive deck and such a positive guidebook. Often when I think about the Queen of Cups, I can think about somebody who can be sat too much in their emotions. You know, I sometimes think about the Queen of Cups relating to myself when I can become emotionally dysregulated, which is never a great thing. But here in the guidebook that goes with this deck, you don't hear about such things. You hear about the sensitivity of the Queen of Cups, not her flakiness. So yeah, I really like that also. What else have I got here? I've got two more. So the next one is my fantastic Osho Zen deck, which I have had, I think, for maybe 20 odd years also. This is one of my oldest decks, and I just love this deck. So I've just cut onto transformation there, which is death, I think, in this deck. So let's have a little look. This is the guidebook that comes with it. This deck is by Gateway. Let's have a look. It's called the Transcendental Game of Zen. I don't really know a great deal about Osho Zen, but I've always been very interested in Buddhism and Zen Buddhism and much of the philosophy that surrounds this sort of way of life. So this is a lovely book, actually. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to get your head around because it's obviously coming from a very different perspective than traditional tarot, and sometimes that can feel tricky, but let's have a look. So, transformation. So the central figure in this card sits atop the vast flower of the void and holds the symbols of transformation: the sword that cuts through illusion, the snake that rejuvenates itself by shedding its skin, the broken chain of limitations, and the yin-yang symbol of transcending duality. One of its hands rests upon its lap, open and receptive, and the other reaches down to touch the mouth of a sleeping face. Symbolizing the silence that comes when we are at rest. This is a time for a deep let go. Any pain, sorrow, or difficulty just to be there, accepting. It is very much like the experience of Buddha when, after years of seeking, he finally gave up, knowing there was nothing more that he could do. That very night, he became enlightened. Transformation comes like death in its own time, and like death, it takes you from one dimension into the other. A master in Zen is not simply a teacher. In all the religions, there are only teachers. They teach you about subjects which you don't know, and they ask you to believe, because there is no way to bring those experiences into objective reality. Neither has the teacher known them, he has believed them. That's a really significant point, isn't it? He has believed them. He transfers his belief to somebody else. Zen is not a believer's world. It is not for the faithful ones. It is for those daring souls who can drop all belief, unbelief, doubt, reason, mind, and simply enter into their pure existence without boundaries. So it will bring a tremendous transformation. Zen is involved in metamorphosis, in transformation. It is authentic alchemy. It changes you from base metal into gold. So there's bits more, but I won't read any more. I think that's kind of enough for you to get sort of the theme of this. So that obviously this transformation card here is death. And, you know, in Western philosophy, you know, many people think that you die and that's all there is to it, or you die and you go to heaven, or you go somewhere. Whereas in the Osho Zen deck, this is talking very much about death as a transformational process, and not just a real death, as in the death of a person. It's transformation and metamorphosis, just at its very basic meaning, I guess, isn't it? Yeah, he's talking about pure existence there. So the last deck that I've got here to talk about, and this is a lovely deck. This was bought for me by my friend. I haven't used it a great deal just because I find it just too big. As you can see, it is a massive deck. It's beautiful, it's beautifully gilded. The images are really nice to look at. And I think, to be honest, this is another deck a bit like the Dark Wood Tarot, that if it didn't have such a good guidebook, I maybe wouldn't be keeping it. So this deck is by Yasmin Westwood, and it is by Red Feather. And let's just pick a card. So I've just picked out here this gorgeous Queen of Swords. So let's have a read from the book and see what it says about the Queen of Swords. There's an awful lot of information in this book, actually. I mean, we get to page 34 before we even start looking at the cards in any great detail. There's a lot of different explanations here about what is tarot, choosing a tarot deck, spreads, ethics, how to begin a reading, basic tarot spreads, keeping a journal. There's beautiful pages that show you all of the major arcana, and then other ones that show you all of the other suits. Really, really nice. This is such a lovely deck. I just so wish it was smaller. I had seen the other day somebody who had cut their cards and they'd cut a lot of the borders off, but if you do that, you're going to lose the keywords at the bottom, so I'm not really sure about that. I do like the keywords. So let's have a look. So she holds herself with such reserve, she smiles, but the smile doesn't reach her eyes, even in the company of the girls she's chosen to eat with. So that's a little quote. And then we've got keywords: quick-witted, independent, honest, principled, intellectual, aloof, and divorced. The Queen of Swords looks out with a cool, calm expression with no visible emotion. She wears a magnificent crown of ice and cold blue, wearing her aloofness with pride upon her head. Her long hair with hints of an icy grey flows down her shoulders, signifying the wisdom she's earned through her journey. Having overcome a great deal in her life, she now has the wisdom to pass it on. The fact that she allows the grey to show and has made no attempt to cover it up indicates that she does not care about the opinions of others, which can't be said for me, as I have, well, I have lots of grey in my hair, but I have had mine highlighted and covered up. So, not the Queen of Swords. There is a sword in front of her covering her heart. She puts the mind over emotions in any decision she makes, and for this she is known to be a just and wise queen who is decisive and quick. She's direct and to the point, although she can come across as aggressive or hurtful. However, if she feels injustice is being done, she will not hesitate to fight in your corner. She works alone without anyone's input, or it may be that she is divorced or widowed and as such has gotten used to such dealings with things on her own. Perhaps her sternness and aloof nature are because she has had to hold the fort on her own and to prevent people from manipulating her or taking advantage of her. She does not want to let anyone close to her, so the facade of being cold helps. So the thoughts at the bottom of this are, how do you communicate? Are you direct and to the point? Or do you have a tendency to beat around the bush? So I don't know what you think of that, but I think that's really nice. I think that's an explanation of the Queen of Swords that we can all sort of relate to, can't we? We know people like that. We can have those kind of tendencies within ourselves sometimes. I really like that there's thoughts on each of the pages here, and they ask you questions. It feels kind of interactive and thought-provoking. So yeah, I think it's a really, really, really nice little book. And like I said, if the guidebook wasn't as good as it is, I think that that deck may well have left my collection by now. So anyway, I realise I've waffled on for quite a while, but I wanted to sort of show, I wanted to read a little bit from each of the guidebooks, really, just to show you why I like them so much. So I hope that you enjoyed that, and do go and give Lisa or Katie's or Maria's videos a look if you're interested in guidebooks. And as I said, I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.